AI coding platform Replit just raised $250 million and tripled its valuation to $3 billion. But the real headline is that it also launched something called Agent 3. This is a next-gen AI developer agent that can build apps almost entirely on its own. So Agent 3 doesn't just suggest code, it actually tests it, fixes bugs, and clicks through your app like a real user to make sure everything works, all without needing constant human input. So CEO Amjad Masad said in a post on X, quote, Agent 3 is 10x more autonomous. It keeps going where others get stuck. The full self-driving moment of software. He also says it has 10x longer fully autonomous runs than its predecessor, Agent 2. So Agent 3 can run autonomously, fully autonomous for over 3 hours straight, which is about 10x more than Agent 2 could do. Now, also behind the scenes, Replit's growth has been honestly insane. Annual revenue, this is not a typo, jumped from 2.8 million to 150 million in under a year. There are now 40 million users, and they have enterprise clients like companies like Zillow and Duolingo. So, Paul, first maybe talk to me about Agent 3, about Replit's claims here about it being 10x more autonomous. Like, is that legit? And what does that actually mean? Has there been some breakthrough in agents here?
So this is a really important concept to understand and also to delineate between some of the ways we've talked about previous measurement of autonomy and how they're kind of positioning it. So at a really high level, like the main takeaway here is the way these labs are thinking about the future of AI development and the impact it'll have on society and the economy is how long can these things work reliably without human intervention? And so if you remember, again, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, episode 152 it was June 10th of this year. And then earlier in episode 140, which was in March of 2025, we talked about this 7-month rule, which is METR, METR. It's model evaluation and threat research. So it's an organization, the CEO is Beth Barnes. And what they have is the 7-month rule, which is they look at the model's ability, like a 50% chance of successfully completing a task of how long it would take a human to do it. And what they're saying is every 7 months, it's doubling. So right now, what the latest METR research was in March of this year was that AI models had the 50% chance of successfully completing a task that would take an expert human 1 hour. So now this was specific to coding, and that's a really important criteria. Anything we're talking about right now, whether it's related to Replit Agent 3 or this METR rule, is all related to like computer programming. In Replit's case, it's like building apps, writing software basically, not doing legal work or doing marketing work or things like that. So we're like separate out that we're talking specifically about software at this point in coding. So in the METR research, so it was an hour in March. 7 months prior to that, it was 30 minutes. 7 months prior to that, it was 15 minutes. So what they're finding, and it's kind of like a potential scaling law, is that every 7 months, it's doubling. So, the theory then would be by August, you should be at basically 2 hours, 50% chance of 2 hours. So now, interestingly, when GPT-5 came out, METR was given early access to it a couple weeks in advance. And they did find that it was basically continuing to double. So they found that GPT-5 is capable of executing in their specific testing any of 3 main threat models. They used their time horizon evaluation, and this 50% chance of success had jumped to 2 hours and 17 minutes. So it went from 1 hour to 2 hours and 17. So the scaling law was now continuing. So we had like 4 different milestones within it. But they did this going back 6 years. And so it has held. That is different than what we're seeing with Agent 3. So again, the METR is saying 50% chance of it completing something that would take a human 1 hour. What Replit isn't telling us is how long would it take a human to do what you're saying it's doing. All Replit's giving us is runtime, meaning the agent does this thing. I didn't see anywhere where they said reliability, like 50% chance. It was just, it can do something for 200 minutes straight without kind of losing its thought process, losing its planning structure, things like that. Now, is that 200 minutes of agent work equivalent to 20 hours of human work? Like, what would it have taken a human to do it? That's what they did not share.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because Amjad actually tweeted about the meter research. He retweeted a post from like March about the meter research and said, yeah, we're actually seeing something different. So his tweet was, the meter paper says that the length of tasks AI can do is doubling every 7 months, radically undersells the scaling that we're seeing at Replit. It might be true if you're measuring one long trajectory for a single model class, but this is where an agent research lab's alpha is at. We build multi-agent architecture and use different models from various providers to tap into their latent abilities across various tasks. So I'm going to zoom out and explain what that means. What he's saying is meters research, which is the best we've seen publicly so far, that projects every 7 months, it doubles. So if you take a human and it takes them 1 hour to do something, in 7 months, it'll be able to do 2 hours of that human work. What he's saying is we actually rapidly scale beyond this by using multiple agents.
Mhm.
So we're going to have an agent that verifies things. We're going to have an agent that creates the plan. So they're using multiple model providers because Replit doesn't build their own models. They're basically using, let's say they imagine they're using like an Anthropic model for something, an OpenAI model for something. Maybe they're using Gemini for something. I don't know what the architecture is, but they're able to use different agents to do all of these things simultaneously. So what their agent one in September 2024 did 2 minutes of runtime. Agent two in February 2025 was 20 minutes of runtime. Agent three in September 2025 is 200 minutes. So they're kind of following more, what is this, every 6 months it's 10xing?
10x.
Is that, am I doing my math right in my
roughly,
head?
yeah.
Yeah. So they're on a whole nother level of scale of runtime. Now, the missing piece of this equation is what is that 200 minutes equal in human time?
Mhm.
All of that extracted. If you go to their website, it is 10x autonomy. Like they are all in on we are automating human work. In this specific instance, automating computer programming is what they're actually doing. The key for the economy is when do we see these kinds of scaling laws in healthcare, in finance, in marketing and sales and customer success and operations? We don't have that research right now. There aren't evals that are looking at that. That is the thing. And Mike and I have had, I don't think I've publicly said this before, Mike and I have had these conversations internally of like the need for those level of evals at a industry level or at a job specific level, because everything we're able to share with you today is coming from people who are doing this for AI research and computer programming. It's when you translate it over to your job and you say, wow, Mike spends 2 hours a week on this task.
Mhm.
This AI agent is able to do that in 2 minutes with 90% accuracy. Things change when those are the kinds of statements we can make. And so that's the significance and why, again, like some of you, if you're newer to all this, like Replit is not a household brand in enterprises. Like that's not probably, it's not on the OpenAI level, the Anthropic level where you've probably heard of them. They matter though. And like what they're doing matters. And Amjad is a very intelligent CEO and they're doing incredible research. And this is the kind of stuff you will see. Google's working on the same kind of thing. OpenAI, everybody's working on this. They just kind of seem to be the one that's like publicly leading the way talking about it. And they've found ways to deal with the inefficiencies of computer use agents from Anthropic and OpenAI and Google that aren't working very well. They claim they've found ways to fix that. So very, very interesting research direction and potentially important breakthroughs when we like look back on this a year from now.
And really important to note, I was digging into where did all that growth come from, because 2.8 million to 150 million in less than a year is crazy. It's largely driven by agents. So that can tell you, A, I think they know what they're talking about, but B, there's a vested interest here, right, in promoting what agents can do.
Absolutely.
Because that is driving their business. I think at one point their business was really on the rocks before all this. So it's amazing to see. I have nothing against Replit, but just also important to note, like before we go tweeting that chart where they show 10x autonomy,
Correct.
right? Keep in mind that we are all who have vested interests in certain things, and theirs is in agents being amazing.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean it's that for your job.
Right.
Like that.
Right.
And again, like is it the whole problem with autonomy is when it's talked about, people and even agents, more specifically, they assume it's transferable. That
Mhm.
like, oh man, if they're 10xing autonomy, that means my job as, an HR professional or a lawyer or a CEO, I can 10x my performance, my productivity if I go get Replit. No, that is not what we're saying at all. Um, but it's a prelude to the breakthroughs happen where the greatest value will be created, which
Right.
right now is in AI research and engineering and programming. And that's why all the labs are starting there. But when they solve how to do it there in reliable ways, then it trickles out into all the other industries.
And I'm super bullish on agents long term, like we've discussed. I would just say if you are in a non coding role, go try out OpenAI agent mode on three different, very different tasks, and then come back and you'll have a much better, a much more
Yeah.
sober look at what's possible and what's not. And
Or
it's
yeah,
amazing. I like it, but it's you'll see the limitations pretty
totally.
quick.
And deep research is another great example. Like
Yeah.
it's incredibly impressive, but it still just has its flaws. And that's a great way to experiment with an agent is like go build a deep research project in Gemini or in ChatGPT, and you'll see an agent at work. You'll see it do its planning. You'll see it go through a chain of thought. You'll see it, but it's not doing those like self-correcting and verifying the outputs. But that's all going to come, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the example here. That's basically what they've solved in programming is it can do the planning, it can create the plan to follow, it can go through a chain of thought. But now they have agents within this architecture that then look at the work and find flaws and then self-correct the work, and then they like keep going. That when they hit a blockade, they fix it themselves.
Mm.
You don't have that in like deep research right now in Gemini and ChatGPT, but it's coming. Like all of this is a prelude to what will happen to the general tools the rest of us use.